Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my review of 2 Point Hospital. So I've been playing this for the past few days. I did play it back when it came out, 2018, geez that's a while ago. And the main impetus for revisiting this in the first place is because 2 Point Museum has been given a release date early next year, so we'll be having a look at that when that comes out. I'm particularly excited because I really like this game. I really like what it did for a sequel, which was 2 Point Campus, sort of like a school university simulator, and it addresses a lot of the issues in this game. But all in all, I really enjoyed this sort of weird series that was born on the back of being a throwback kind of spiritual successor revival of a classic game called Theme Hospital. Now, if you're a young bloke, you might not be across that, and if you're an old bloke, you're probably reminiscing as soon as I mentioned it. So it's probably worth leading with that. This uniquely nailed reimagining or remaking, even though it's not formally a remake. I don't know how much this has to do with Bullfrog, who was the original studio of Theme Hospital, but as far as the sort of mouthfeel, they've brought it forward. A kind of dad joke themed hospital simulator. However, it's got all the bells and whistles that you'd expect from a modern game doing just that. And you can think of the countless situations where you've got games that have been remade, games that have just been re-released as the old port, and you see all the problems of the age and the technology and the controls, the limitations. We've also seen pretty soft remasters, you know, like the way they do The Last of Us. They just up-res the graphics a bit, but it's pretty much exactly the same. So this sits somewhere between that and what you're seeing with like the Capcom Resident Evil 2 type remakes. They're pretty extreme, they change the perspective, but maybe that helps give you an idea. This isn't exactly pushing the genre forward and doing anything radically different, but I'd bet you anything if you went back and installed Theme Hospital wherever you can play it, it's probably agony to play because you're spoiled because of modern gameplay development. So yes, it works really well. If you're a fan of Theme Hospital and somehow you've slept on this and you've never heard of this, you should go out and get it immediately. Otherwise, as a sort of baby's first hospital management game, not that there's a whole lot of them, this is a really good on-ramp. This is the first one that you should play. I'm a little bit spoiled because there is a game called Project Hospital that came out years later, a bit more smaller profile, but it has a cult following as a bit more of a hardcore hospital simulator. I think it's a little unfair to compare them together. That game feels almost like it was born on the back of, hey, we liked 2 Point Hospital, but we want to kind of ratchet it up a little bit and make it a bit more hardcore. So we'll just stay with 2 Point Hospital for the moment, but if you play this and you enjoy it and you come away wanting more, obviously there's the sequel in the school campus thing, but if you want more hospital stuff, I'd say Project Hospital would be the next stop. So look, what is this game at the core? You run hospitals and it has this kind of back and forth overworld map. You know, there's lots of different hospitals, and as you like get 1 star in one, you'll be able to jump forward and you can jump back to multi-star them. At first that excites me because I really like that weird Metroidvania strategy design. You don't see it anywhere else other than, say, Jurassic World Evolution, and that game does it perfectly. Here, not so much, right? You can go back and multi-star them because you want to and you're a perfectionist, but the sort of long tail unlock system, the motivation to do that is pretty weak. It's mostly like, you know, cosmetics and this system that I don't particularly like engaging with, and I think you'll find a lot of people that are attracted to these sort of systems-heavy games, you know, trying to solve the game, trying to figure out the puzzles and how it works, probably don't give that much of a shit about cosmetics, right? Leave that for the Sim 4 players. So, you know, it's a valiant attempt, but it doesn't really hold up when you compare it to contemporaries that do it better. But don't stress it because there's that many hospitals to keep you going. At the time of this review, and for those who want to cross it, once I hit 18 hours, I'll post a video if I'm still not through the game. That's the average amount of time that it takes to clock most games according to how long to beat. I'll probably go back and do some more and maybe do a follow-up video. But like, I've absolutely got my value and money's worth from it, and there's still plenty more levels to play, and I'm pretty much just 1-starring everything. I've gone back and done a few, but yeah, as far as just plowing through content and clocking one hospital at another, there's plenty here. But the core loop, to break it down in broad strokes, is that you have an influx of patients constantly, and this is dictated by governing statistics like the reputation of your hospital. So like if you keep killing patients, your reputation will drop down, and it will have a sort of death spiral feedback loop in that you will get less customers coming. But then there's also the ever ballooning out hospital value. So the bigger your hospital gets, the more plots you buy. That also dictates patient influx. So it starts slow, it scales up. There's also some sort of hidden in the background mechanic governing the variety of illnesses that you see, which then in turn need different treatment facilities and all that. There's something there that it sort of levels up. But in the beginning, it's only some handful of things. And basically they'll check in at reception, they'll go to a GP's office, the GP will do a diagnosis, and depending on things like the policy of your hospital, the default's 90% close enough diagnosis, but you can make it 100% thorough, or you can just turn it into a bloody meat wagon workshop and jam people through barely diagnosed. But depending on that, say he doesn't fully diagnose the illness, they will be sent to follow-up diagnoses rooms, whether that's something like cardiology or like a scanner room, that sort of thing, and then they'll potentially bounce back and forth to the GP's offices, and they start to queue up pretty hard, and you have to come up with your own system to govern that. But the idea is to hit the diagnosis threshold, right? Let's say it's 100%. 100%, we know what the illness is. They will then go to a treatment room, right? And all of this is so dad joke humor, but it doesn't hang its hat on its humor. That's the thing about humor games, just while we're on it. I personally don't like games that fancy themselves as funny, because often what they do is hang their hat on the humor first, right? Hey, look how funny our game is. And the truth is, humor is so subjective, and the game industry is often that disconnected from what normal people like, that, you know, you sit there, you roll your eyes and go, that's a bit cringe. Is the game good? And often with a humor-based game, it's not, right? They go all in on the humor, and then they have a shitty gameplay loop underpinning it. That's not what's going on here. The humor is really funny, and it hits for me. It's not going to hit for everyone, but it is also sort of corny dad jokes from the radio voiceover announcers, which, by the way, outside of GTA games and their radios, like, they're much more edgy and, let's say, adult, right? This is the best example of doing it just as well, but aimed at a more, I don't know, like I said, old dad joke type audience or young people, but it's just really polished and well done, and all the DJs are varied and they're very funny, and there's all these commercials, and it's all very G-rated and corny, but I reckon it lands incredibly well. But yeah, the other part of the humor, the main part, is, you know, the actual illnesses, right? Which will vary. Like, here's an example. One of the early ones is dudes will come in and they've got a bloody light bulb for a head, right? So, I don't know how you can't diagnose that 100%, but anyway, that's, you know, don't get bogged down in it. That's the game mechanics. But they'll go to a clinic, the deluxe clinic, to deluxe, doesn't matter, and you can watch the little animations. They'll sit in the machine, the operator will, you know, basically unscrew their light bulb head and throw it in the bin, and then 3D print them a new head and stick it on, and they're good and ready to go home. And there's so many different ones, right? You've got ones where you've got ones like Mockstar, where they think they're a Freddie Mercury impersonator, which is an excellent throwback because it was like Elvis, I think, in the original theme hospital. But you got these little, you know, Freddie Mercury big mustache dudes cruising around in your waiting rooms, and then they have to go to therapy to be told, well, no, you dickhead, you're not, you're a normal person. But there's all sorts of ones, you know, there's dudes with fucking pans stuck on their head, and there's machines to pull their pans off. It's so dumb, and yet it's great, and there's just almost limitless diseases, and that's your motivation for pushing forward to the next level, or even getting the DLC. We'll table that for a moment. But yeah, it's all very daggy and cheeky. It is one of those things though, like, I'm self-aware enough because I like systems-based games like this, management games. You're gonna sit zoomed out in fast-forward mode, min-maxing. That's inevitable, that's what happens here. So it's cool to zoom in and watch it, and I don't know how we'll go with my B-roll because I'm not trying to be performative, I just play the game as is. But how much time are you really gonna spend watching these cool little animations? You're probably not. You're probably gonna be busy running your hospital once you've seen it once or twice. So yeah, that's the loop. I know we took a few sort of tangents along the way, but it bore being discussed. But ultimately, yeah, diagnosis through to treatment, and then, you know, they get treated, and then hopefully they get cured, but if it fails, they'll, you know, leave sick or even die, and that hurts your reputation. But that's your general loop. And within that, you get into trying to game it, to figure out how it works. And there's enough there that kept me interested and engaged, trying to solve the problems. Like one core thing is the statistics of your doctors, your nurses, all your different staff. You've got assistants and janitors as well. They're sort of the four castes. But it has an actually really unique hybrid leveling system, which I think is really good actually. It's one of those things that once you do get over that hump, you get into the humor, you get into the theme, you enjoy the game, and then you look under the hood, you sort of appreciate how clever it is. So your doctors will have a star rating, and that's experience-based, a mini RPG sort of thing, right? As they treat dudes good or bad, their star rating will level up, and when they unlock a star, that unlocks like a slot for them to train, to learn a discipline. And then this is how you can have very specifically trained super doctors for different areas. And it really will make such an impact of, if you've got a nurse in the pharmacy and all he does is treatment-based and pharmacy-based skills and gets to 5-star, that's pretty much, he's going to cure the most complicated diseases, no worries, as long as, they're fully diagnosed. Impose that against a 1-star, untrained, unspecialized doctor, and he's probably going to have like a 10% chance of, passing some basic illnesses. So it works out something like each star gives them a general 10% against diagnosis or treatment. But using the pharmacy example, there's like, say, a specific skill that you can train your dude in, which is pharmacy management, and that will give him a bonus 20% to treatment. So it's absolutely worth taking. And then you have, a whole training system. You can train with your own doctors. They can share their skills to others. You can hire, sort of big wig celebrity trainers, and they fly in on the helicopter. But that should just give you an idea of how the game works. I mentioned DLC, and while it's on my mind, I'll go into that a bit more. I forked out for all the DLC, even over the Christmas break. It set me back a pretty penny, and I wouldn't say regret, but its value is very surface level, especially given that, I've still got plenty of the core game to go. And in a lot of instances, what it does is it will add a new hospital, and it will add a few new illnesses and treatments, that sort of thing. But like, as far as the actual core loop goes, it doesn't really augment it or change it. It's just more stuff, and it sort of, plays pretty close to the sun when it's more cosmetic than gameplay. Like, technically, yeah, it's adding more, but all it's really doing is adding more skins in a way. My honest advice would be, pick this game up. You could pick it up full price. It's worth it if you find this interesting. But table the DLC. I would clock it, exhaust your entire time budget on this, and then think about if you want to get the DLC. One other thing though, this is a bit of a negative, I guess, and we talk about this often, is when a developer squeezes the systems that make their game work really hard, often it can fall over and show the cracks. And in a way, this is almost organic design. Think of video games that you've played where you're in the final act, you've played through X hours and you're getting to the finale and it's getting harder, like they're really laying it on. And then part of the systems will start to kind of show their weaknesses, right? Like it starts to not hold up to sunlight quite as well. But you forgive it because you earned that finale and you're already time invested, etc. So this game strains a little bit because as you go through, a lot of the hospitals that you unlock become kind of puzzle gimmick hospitals. And to me, that's like kryptonite to a really interesting management type game. Your Factorios, Satisfactories. It doesn't really matter what it is, but as soon as you're getting into that sort of throughput, production chain, colony management, all that sort of stuff, when you start turning your game into a puzzle scenario as opposed to an exercise in, like efficiency management and engaging with that part of your brain, I really don't like that so much. So I've gotten into a lot of hospitals now where, you do feel a bit hobbled and arm behind the back, and it would seem the developer's idea of adding value and more depth to the gameplay loop is hobbling you for the scenario. A great example would be the most recent one that I've been not so much stuck on, but I'm kind of not enjoying it actually, where you're sort of running kind of a public hospital, right? Sort of, let's say, non-for-profit. So you don't actually make any money in the scenario from curing dudes. What you do make the money from is because there's a benefactor that owns the hospital and he'll give you missions that you need to do. And it's totally RNG, and some of them are absolute shit. And if you cancel them, you take a really big reputation bonus. And so you're sitting there running kind of a crap hospital, doing these missions. And in a way, like maybe, I don't want to give the developers too much credit, but it might actually be a scathing commentary on the public health system and how it doesn't really work. Because your hospital, technically, is still running because you're doing these obtuse missions, and yet people are dying in your corridors, your GP's office is queued up, it's just miserable, everything's on fire, and it just sucks. And regardless of whether it is the developers trying to make some sort of statement, or if it's just shitty gameplay design, the end result is exactly the same. It's a really unpleasant level to play, and you're not actually playing Theme Hospital, you're playing do arbitrary, boring missions like water tin plants. So look, I've enjoyed my time with it, but if it's going to be more of those missions that are just going to test my patience and make me play some sort of other version of the core game, then I'm kind of happy to hang my hat up now and just call it a day. Oh, and before I forget, there is another really cool mode. I don't know if it's implemented through a DLC or a post-launch patch, but it's kind of like a wave defense mode, and I could see myself putting way more hours into that. I kind of had to stop playing it because I just wanted to get through more of the game. But you can go back and play levels that you've already beaten. I think it's called Remux, whatever. It's got some weird in-world lore about how it's a virtual reality mission or something, right? And it's basically waves. It'll be like, right, a whole busload of dudes are rocking up, and so it changes the pace that you're used to. It's not a steady flow of dudes at your reputation level. It's stop, go, and you need to cure the wave over a certain threshold of not killing people, like say 70%, and they send you 10 dudes, right? You fail the wave, you need to replay it. So, it's not a hard scrub. Though I did find that if you do find yourself in a death spiral where you're not making enough money, there's not really a way out of it. So you just got to be careful you don't overhire or anything like that. But I found that really interesting and probably would get the most long-term value from someone like me, because it was tricky. I was up to like wave 7 or 8 before I really sort of moved on from that mode. But yeah, so I suppose there's a replayability, even if you did play it and you had a similar experience to me where maybe you got a bit frustrated with some of the later maps and their gimmick. I wouldn't give up on this game straight away. Anyway, look, it's not all negative. In fact, it's mostly positive. I just thought I'd mention that because that was on my mind. I'll probably try and find some time to get around 2 Point Campus between now and Museum, because what I did play of Campus when it came out, I really enjoyed it, and if memory serves, it actually has a lot more depth and variety than this, so a great sequel that builds upon it. Anyway, I don't want to waffle, but I feel like I've been fairly thorough. By the time this video goes up, I think we're still going to be in winter sale, so think about grabbing it. It's a great game, it's really fun. And if you are actually a bit standoffish about, let's say, management type games, I know they're not for everyone, and you've made it this far, really think about grabbing this. It's about as friendly an on-ramp from theme to mechanics as you're possibly ever going to get. Anyway, team, might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.